Scrutiny Performance Panel and Service Improvement and Finance. We have apologies for absence, which is the first item on the agenda, and we have a number, Emily?
We do. We have apologies today from Councillor Peter Jones, Councillor Mary Jones, Councillor Jeff Jones and Councillor Andrew Stevens.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I take this opportunity to wish you all a happy and very prosperous Christmas and New Year, and remain healthy as well, as this is my last meeting prior to the break. Right, moving back onto the agenda, disclosure of personal and prejudicial interests. Anyone? Members or officers? No. Prohibition of whip votes and declarations of party whips. I don't know why we put that in. Nobody ever says anything, so I just don't know why. But there we are. The minutes of the previous meeting, I'll go through page by page. Okay, page 1, page 2, page 3. Can I say, on the annual performance report, I think it was incredibly informative, and I know that other members felt the same as well. And I know there was some concern about this having a scrutiny of it, but I think it was well worth it in the end. Okay, and page 4. All happy with them?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right. Item 5 is public questions, and I don't think we have any. Emily, do we?
No public questions, no.
Okay, thank you. Item 6 is the Recycling Landfill Annual Performance Report. Mark, do you want to say anything prior to any of the officers coming in?
Yes, if I could, Chair, I just wanted to highlight a few. I mean, obviously everybody's had the report and will have read it, but wanted to draw attention to a couple of specific points. I mean, obviously this is the end of it's a 2020/21 report, so it's a little bit historic now. But I think if you look at particular attention I wanted to focus on was our recycling target of achieving our recycling target of 64% last year. Despite all of the, we went through the height of the pandemic at the time, and that was something, really to be proud of. And the fact that we achieved that is it was an amazing effort, really. I think it's easy just to gloss over this. An amazing effort by, and particularly our crews who are still out there in all weathers, all environments, particularly in the height of the pandemic, and still collecting the waste and the recycling from the doorstep. And that went unabated, unaffected. There were a couple of 1 or 2, delays where sometimes some of the recycling or waste wasn't picked up to the next day, sort of thing. But generally speaking, it was nothing short of an heroic effort. As well as that, I mean, the public as well then, who obviously maintained the recycling effort generally throughout the pandemic. We did see an increase, which a slight increase in our residual black bag waste, but with everybody working from home, or not everybody, but many people working from home, I suppose a lot of that could be put down to people generating more waste at home because they were at home more rather than the office. But that is still to be analysed. There is going to be a follow-up report to this with much more detail in Council in January, where we look at our waste strategy going forward over the next 3 years as well. So much more detail. There'll be an opportunity to discuss at Council, much more detail in in how we take our recycling performance and targets going forward. But I think we're on course this year again to reach our target, but possibly with a slight dip of we're focused in potentially to go from 64.6 down to 64. And again, I am not concerned about that. In an ideal world, you should never look to see a reduction in waste, but I think there are a lot of mitigating circumstances. I explain it. It's not through a downturn in performance in any way, shape or form. So I particularly wanted to draw attention to that. There is, I mean, there's a lot of factors in here about particularly the focus on Welsh Government setting targets for future targets 2025 of reaching 70%. Currently we're at 64 and meeting that. And the change to 70% is something that we are gearing up and are confident of meeting. Now, if you look in the table there, effectively it says that our performance last year put us in 17th in Wales out of the 22 authorities, but you've got to contextualise that as well. I mean, most of the 22 authorities send most of their waste to energy from waste. If we had been doing that in 2021, it's equivalent to a recycling rate of around 5, maybe 6%, but certainly 5. So if we had been, because through taking stuff to landfill, you get no recycling benefit, but if it had all gone from an energy from waste facility, we would have expected at least 5%. So we could have been looking at, if it was a different set of circumstances, that being around that performance around 69-70%, which would have put us in the top quartile. So again, the other distorting factor is when you sort of go in a league table, and it does mention it in the report, is that obviously we are a urban authority where we have, as explained there, we have a high student population, we have a lot of industry, business, a big commercial sector, etc. So there are a lot. It's difficult to compare like for like. You probably in reality have to compare urban with urban rather than urban and rural, because there's a different set of circumstances around that. That makes it more challenging for an urban authority. But nevertheless, I'm still proud of what we've achieved and what we will be achieving. The bit that's not in the report, and I just wanted to bring us a reminder, because of course it's last year's report, is we are, as it's just a reminder, it is a matter of public record, but we are in the process of moving away from landfill in February of next year. So it's only a couple of months away. T. John is going to close, and we are in the middle of securing a contract for an energy from waste facility to take our residual or black bag waste to an energy waste from energies facility. So that's still being, it's in contract negotiations now. So, but that's imminent to be concluded. We're not in a position to announce anything yet because it's still going through the legal processes. So that is going to happen. Again, that isn't in the report because it's last year, but I wanted to bring particular attention to that. I've got nothing further to add, Chair, but I don't know if Matthew wants to come in, or I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have. Okay, Matthew, do you want to say anything before I go to members?
I don't think there's a huge amount more to add than Councillor Thomas mentioned, really. I can give more context, more detail to any of it. I think, as Mark said, last couple of times I've been to Scrutiny, been mentioning, we've sort of got to have a strategy in place to move beyond landfill and go to energy from waste. And it was, from my point of view, all about timing. Our landfill contract is sort of reaching the end, end of its term. Now is the right time to flip over. As Mark said, sort of going to energy from waste sort of aligns with Welsh Government's current strategy. They have got a new strategy document for things beyond sort of 2025, which will get picked up in the report that comes in January. So, any questions, I can elaborate. I'll try not to bore people for too long, mind you.
Okay. Councillor Peter Black.
You're on mute, Peter.
Yeah, sorry, I just realised. I've got a number of questions. Just on that last point on energy from waste, do we actually make a large saving in landfill tax by doing that?
Do you want me to answer, Mark? Or?
Yeah, because it's a bit of both. There's savings, there's cost benefits and cost differences as well. But Matthew was better equipped to answer that detail. Yeah.
Short answer is no, we don't. Energy from waste is more expensive than landfill. So one of the reasons we've sort of kept landfill in historically is we the council own the landfill. If we didn't put our own waste in it, we'd have to pay to put soil in it, and it would be sort of just to bring up the profile. From our point of view, finance and recycling targets, etc., it's sort of best thing for the council has been the landfill up till now. Actually, going forward, it's energy from waste is more expensive than landfill, but actually by closing the landfill, we do reduce the operational costs at the site itself. We got a couple of years where we'll still need to sort of cap and restore it. But going forward, the site gets increasingly cheaper to run, if you like. So there's a crossing over point where we pay slightly more, but so sunk costs, for perhaps a want of a better phrase, are reducing year on year.
So on balance, about break even then.
it will be in a couple of years. At first
Yeah.
year or so, it'll cost a bit more, but going forward, it will be cheaper.
Okay. Right. In terms of the doorstep collections, do we have any plans to expand the number of things which we collect? I'm thinking particularly of Tetra Packs. I mean that, you know, I know this facility. I take 6 months at a time up to the Penland tip. So I mean, I save money, but a lot of people just shove them in their black bags. And it just strikes me that particularly is one way you can maybe expand the doorstep recycling collections.
You happy for me to go again?
Yes, go on, Matthew, because again,
I think there's an absolute huge bunch of materials which would be, you know, which could be rolled out at the curbside. You know, sort of small electrics, sort of textiles, Tetra Packs being an example. I think we currently Welsh government has sort of you know, got a blueprint of you know, of the core materials we currently picking up. They've just written a sort of a new strategy called Beyond Recycling, which is due to kick in so 2025 and run till 2050. Note from that is we are probably expected to start picking up different things. You know, they will start targeting different materials. It's heavily linked to a couple of new bits of legislation that are going to come in the next couple of years. Extended producer responsibility, or EPR, and sort of things like deposit return schemes, or DRS, which you're probably all going to have the pleasure of reading as much as I and Mark have had to read in the last sort of couple of months. If we start jumping now, it's effectively jumping before we know what the new legislation is going to bring in. So we are still looking at sort of potentially under chassis cages on our RCVs to pick up different materials. We've had everything from, you know, Tassimo or other coffee pods, you know, because, you know, these manufacturers have looked at things, realised they've got a really difficult to recycle material. It'll be really expensive for them to bring in you know, an extended producer responsibility scheme. So can they get in early and you know, get councils to start sort of helping their producer responsibility on the cheap? I think my thoughts are there's probably stuff we can do in the interim now, and until new policy or new legislation comes out, or and partly until our current vehicles reach end of life. I probably wouldn't target Tetra Packs as a start. I'd probably go and target things like small electrics or batteries, possibly. Doing a couple of things. They are heavier, so we currently, you know, based on weight-based metrics.
Course,
so and also from a battery point of view, there are quite a few issues naturally where you know, the things like mobile phones or electric toothbrushes or something or other in the waste can cause fires. So getting batteries out of the waste stream is something which looks, you know, which sort of you know, would be probably preferable from a safety and weight-based point of view. I think Tetra Packs, etc., will come on in the next sort of 2, 3, 4 years, but legislation may drive that rather than other bits to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, following on from that in terms of the vehicles, I mean, if you go to Neath Patalbot, they have these really fancy vehicles with all different slots to put all the different things in. It's a bit like, it looks a bit like the Krypton factory, I reckon, for the refuse collectors, know which goes into which slot. But I mean, are there advantages to us when we come to renew our vehicles to getting that sort of vehicle?
Pros and cons again. So our current fleet and our current collection, we've come along through COVID. We haven't had to change our fleets. We've had to tweak rounds and bits and pieces, but actually, again, sorry, try to bore you. You know, we're picking up about 10,000 tons of paper and cardboard from the curbside a year, and I've been consistently really for the last sort of 5-6 years. Our proportionate mix of paper versus cardboard has changed massively during COVID, as people have sort of got more and more home deliveries. We've just been able to suck that up and swallow it. Whereas Neath Patalbot and all the other councils who are doing curbside sort, who've got a vehicle with enough storage space for a ton of cardboard, and that would get them around 600 houses, find that they get around 400 houses, and their ton of cardboard is already full. So they've had to go off and redesign rounds, put more vehicles on, etc., to cope with sort of changing waste composition. So our pro is we just cracked on with it, and COVID and things like this haven't made a massive impact to us. yes, actually doing different materials and being able to have a curbside sort vehicle which has got a small electric thing on it would be nice, but it does have downsides as well, I guess.
Okay.
Can I add a comment from a practical point of view as well, Chair? As well as everything Matthew has mentioned there, we've also got to take into consideration, and it is a practical issue, we're aware of people, particularly in flats, in properties that haven't got gardens, etc., terrace properties.
Yeah.
They currently, some people still, currently experience a difficulty with all the different bags and the different bins for containers that they have for the current collection methods. So whenever we look at expanding, we've also got to look at people's capability to store and collect this material and separate it out as well. So that's not a major factor in our decision-making process, but something we always take into account when we're looking at changing the services, because for many people, they've got plenty of area to store bins and keep it outside like I have. But people, as we know, live in high-rise flats and things like that. It can be a challenge. So it's trying to provide that opportunity for all, whatever we do, that everybody can take part in that service that we're trying to provide.
And the number of bags and boxes in these Batarbus is insane. People have to store there. Yeah. Okay. My last question, Chair. Sorry. In paragraph 3.3, you mentioned the deposit return scheme already. Presumably we're waiting for the Welsh Government to come forward with their proposals before we do anything on that. I just was a bit puzzled by the last sentence of that paragraph when you said that if it could lead to a reduction in our I can't find it now. A negative impact on councils' recycling rates if we do that. But I always understood that the recycling rates were a percentage of what we collected. So if they're being taken back, they're not being collected, and therefore it shouldn't have an impact on the percentage.
Well, what you'll see is a reduction in our collection tonnage.
In volume, yes.
In volume, yes, and as a consequence, a reduction in our overall recycling rate. I mean, because what it is within that scheme, particularly things like pop bottles and that, Coke bottles and that sort of thing, are considered high value in the recycling market. They're much sought after, and obviously those are the key things that are going to be targeted under the DRS system. So those are the people that are going to have the deposit return scheme. So they are going to be effectively out, not completely, but they are going to be hugely reduced and out of our collection service. And as I said, those are the ones that do contribute to our recycling rate. So, because it's good quality material that the processors want as well. So it does clearly come as recyclable material.
I can see a reduction in the volume, and I can see a reduction in income. The rate, though, is a proportionate thing. That's what I was confused by.
All right, well, perhaps Matthew can answer that better than I would.
Yeah. So what happens is, you're right. We pick up about 4,000 tons of bottles, pots, tubs, trays from the curbside every year, out of 100,000 tons. So what'll happen is there'll be a percentage of that 4,000 tons which goes back into reverse vending or something or other else, which never becomes waste on our bottom line. But it's a material we recycle sort of virtually at 100%. We pull some rejects out, but it's almost 100% recycling. And we have a mix and match of of 100,000 tons. Some of it is virtually 100% recycling. Some of it might only be 60% recycling, and the high recycling bits sort of offset the low recycling bits. So as we lose some of the high recycling bits, you've got a relatively higher percentage of the lower recycling things. So it basically, good thing it goes somewhere, or might be a good thing it goes somewhere else, but actually it might drag our 64.6% down to 64.2% just by bringing DRS in. So
okay, I see that.
Okay, Councillor Des Thomas. He's left. Oh, there he is.
He pressed the lead button by mistake, I think.
I think he's pressed the wrong button. There he is.
Oh, yeah.
Des, you're on mute.
You're right, I did. I pressed the wrong button. I had it in my hand and I pressed the phone instead of the mic. Right, sorry about that. Just a brief question to go back to an energy to waste, or waste to energy. I assume that's an out of county facility. wherever it may be. So that's going to add to the cost. It's also going to add to the environmental impact with vehicles travelling. Is that a great cost, a great difference to our actions?
Well, certainly, I mean, it will be out of county. There aren't any energy from waste facilities that we could use within county. So it will be, by definition, as I said, we're in the middle of that process now. So, you know, the conclusion, as I said, won't be far away. But there will be added transport costs because we're transporting stuff further away than we currently are, because it's all, you know, going just to Tir John. But it's a balance between that added impression on our footprint than it is to the waste that's being created by, you know, putting it in a hole in the ground effectively. So overall, even though it means transporting it elsewhere to an energy from waste facility, that is seen by all quarters to be a more climate emergency friendly thing to do. I don't know if we're able to do the actual cost benefit analysis there's between, you know, what the negative impacts of putting something into a ground as opposed to transporting it elsewhere. But I mean, to be truthful, I mean, you'll see in the report that comes to council, I mean, January said it's a bit more, but although we are doing this, and as Matthew said, it was quite timely for us because we were coming to the end of our contract with Tir John anyway. As of 2025, when Welsh Government's new initiatives come in, there is a requirement for all authorities to recycle 70% of its material. Of the 30% that's left, a maximum of only 5% can go to landfill anyway. So whether we were moving now or moving next year or the year after, in 2025, we would have to move away from landfill anyway. So there are definitely different environmental impacts to be considered, as in transportation, you know, burning fuel on the roads and diesel trucks and all of that. But I think overall, if we take it as in the round, it's always been seen as a better, and it's future-proofing as well, because, you know, when you put something into a hole in the ground, you know, you don't know the impacts of that over a long period of time, etc. So this is for future generations and well-being and all that. It is definitely better to move away from landfill, you know, that's, but it's not at zero cost, either financially or environmentally, because, you know, at the moment, there aren't any zero cost ways of getting rid of our residual waste. We do believe, and that's why we're looking at short-term contracts when we go into this energy from waste. New technology is coming on stream all the time as we speak. There are new ideas but they're not actually at fruition yet. So we're looking to secure a short-term contract so that we're able to switch to any of these new cleaner technologies that come along in the next couple of years. So as I said, there is definitely going to be a different impact from an environmental aspect, and we're not hiding away from that, but it has got to be better than putting stuff in a hole in the ground effectively.
Yeah, sure. But we've been talking about new technology for how long? 20 years at least.
Yeah.
And the other element, of course, is when lorries are travelling along a motorway out of county, they're not collecting waste. So we've got, you know, it's that element to be considered as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It may be worth me saying, I think Mark sort of covered all the points there. What we'll end up with is a balance of sort of slightly more carbon by hauling a little bit further, but actually far less carbon by going to energy from waste than landfill. So one of the things Welsh Government are doing at the moment is they are starting to put the sort of a bunch of carbon metrics together so we can effectively benchmark ourselves and then monitor our carbon in future years, you know, and changes in our, you know, and how we operate and what our processes are. So out of that monitoring, what you will see is us switching from landfill to EFW is going to produce far less carbon, even allowing for the haulage. So it is sort of environmentally a better option. It isn't going to be actually our lorries which drive out the county. What we'll still do is we'll take them to the baling plant, and actually there'll be bulk it up effectively. So
okay.
7 or 8 ton loads come into the baling plant and 20 ton loads get hauled out somewhere else. We still do that. It's just the 20 ton loads aren't going to be hauled to the baling plant. They're going to be hauled to another location out the county.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
So basically, the baling plant becomes a transit
transfer station.
Station.
Much like it was sort of you know, when it was originally built, it was called a baling plant because we used to take all of our waste in there and bale it. So you know,
that's right. Yeah.
So we're doing something similar, but not baling it. It'll just be going back out in a. And don't you know, this contract comes with sort of better, more efficient vehicles. We're currently using 20-ton Arctic trailers to move waste. We're going to be using 24-ton Arctic trailers to move waste. So actually, you know, it will be moving more efficiently than we currently are moving it. So.
And I know Linda James is trying desperately to get online. He texted me to say that she has been, but she's fallen out again. Right. Any other members got any questions? No. Couple of things. Can I say, Mark, and as Matthew is here, and I've told you this previously, that during the pandemic, I think the operation at the baling plant for people going up, booking a site and what have you, was very, very efficient and very well run. And I think it's only important that we say that, and that you, Matthew, hear that, because it really was well done, and I think it's a compliment to all the people that are involved in the planning of it and the operation of it. And when we, as I've told Mark previously, when we do things right, we should celebrate them, and that was really done well in the plant. A couple of other issues: are we still short of green bags for distribution? And obviously the waste to energy, as Councillor Des Thomas has rightly said, has been a thorn in our side for over 25 years with the gate price and where it was going. Can we put it on a train or whatever? All of those issues in it. So the green bags, and the other one is, are we going to be in a position in the near future to take wood to our other sites other than Llansamlet? Because obviously that is causing a problem with fly tipping, etc. So a couple of questions. The centres in Llansamlet, well done. Are the green bags going to be available? Waste to energy, excellent. And wood, are we going to be able to take it somewhere else in the future to hopefully cut down on the amount of fly tipping? Islander. Mark? Matthew?
Yeah, well, certainly I know the bit, and Matthew can go into more detail now with the wood, because that's an ever-changing, even this week, there have been some more changes. That's a very volatile, and Matthew can give you more detail there. But on the green bags, there was a blip. We never actually ran out, but we came close to it. But I think Matthew can reconfirm it. But as far as I'm aware, yeah, we're back to full stock of green bags now. It was a bit of a scare because it was a delay. I mean, not unlike a lot of other things in the chain, everything and everywhere, whether it was a consequence of COVID, Brexit, or a bit of both. But that suffered. I think we were 12 weeks late in getting our promised delivery, something like that. So we nearly ran out. But what we did is took some evasive action, and it avoided running out of bags. But I think Matthew confirmed. I think we've fully restocked now. So, and Matthew can answer on the wood as well, Chair, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so like Mark said, we'd ordered bags well in advance. They got held up sort of over in Vietnam. They got held up in Dover. We literally sort of we thought, sort of feeling slightly smug. We've ordered months and months in advance. This is not going to be a problem, and then sort of had delays at various points. Literally, they turned up sort of. We got told by the sort of haulier. It depends when our lorries come out of the port. It could be any time from sort of 3 days to 3 weeks, and they literally just turned up the next day eventually. But we hadn't had any pre-notice of it, so it was shipping problems. So going forward, we've got bigger stocks, and we're ordering more frequently. So I thought 3 months in advance was more than plenty. We're now ordering 6 months in advance just to preempt that. actually got meetings with the team tomorrow. So comments we've had so far have been a couple of potential points of failure. Outlets running out of bags sort of fairly quickly after having deliveries. We're actually going to be setting up sort of a rota to deliver to outlets more frequently, just to make sure they don't run out of stock. Our primary point of delivering bags is crews and reorder tags, and part of the disruption on that, and I've experienced it myself as a Swansea resident, has been COVID. Actually, when we've got regular crews on vehicles, I tend not to have a complaint about that crew on delivering bags. There's been points through COVID where crews have had positive tests, have needed to sort of self-isolate, and we've got a bunch of people on there who don't know the round. I've literally just come in from staff line as a first day, just to try and cover the round for a couple of days, and we have had quality work issues from some of those people. So as much as we giving them reminders, training them, giving them toolbox talks, people who continually sort of aren't listening to our quality work sort of requirements, aren't getting ordered again. But we have, can't deny we have had issues just maintaining sort of our regular crews on vehicles. So green bag point, yes, we got bags and have plans on making sort of the delivery and availability more robust going forward.
Good, thank you.
Wood point, yeah, so literally hot off the press. We've been waiting for NRW and Environment Agency in England, who sort of lead in NRW's position on wood and breaking, splitting up of wood. I'm waiting to sort of see what information they were going to sort of tell us. They've come up with information in the last week or two saying we actually do have to split up wood. So we're at the point where we're currently accepting all wood bar hazardous wood at the baling plant. We've been told what type of wood is now hazardous, and we have to separately collect and find separate outlets for. We've got inquiries out to find where we can send this wood at the moment. They've sort of there's only certain biomass plants in the UK which can accept hazardous wood. So far, we haven't been able to get in through the door of any of them. So we have got a couple of inquiries out to sort of see if see which places can take wood from us. At that point, we've currently sort of telling public actually we can't accept hazardous wood. Going forward, we are going to be sort of say this wood can go in this skip, but we're only going to start doing it when I've got somewhere for that skip to go, if you like. Up till now, I don't see how we can put sort of put 2 skips in each of the sites. Some of the sites physically don't have space to put two wood skips in. There's also sort of, from my point of view, concern about even if we take it to some of our larger sites like Clyne. I've previously to sort of us pulling the wood skip out to Clyne, I wouldn't have any complaints about wood, but I'd have regular complaints about sort of, well, actually the garden waste skip is full. You've made me drive to Llansamlet because the garden skip has been taken out to be serviced, or the wood skip or the scrap metal skip. Taking wood out of Clyne has sort of vastly reduced our number of complaints, frankly. It increased the wood complaints because we aren't accepting wood, but actually I haven't had one unhappy resident who said, sorry, we haven't been able to accept small electrics, or we haven't been able to accept something or other else. Bit of a double-edged sword. We could potentially put it back in. I think it may create as many problems as it solves. And in going back to Llansamlet, we've got in the next sort of week or two, my plan is I've got to come up with some way of sort of saying, here's the split of the wood according to the latest legislation. That's what goes in which skip. Inform the public, train the staff, and actually find somewhere for that skip to go, which we haven't done yet, haven't had a chance to do yet.
Councillor Thomas, I'm intrigued to know what hazardous wood is. I must admit, I am really intrigued at that. Des, sorry, Des, have I stolen your thunder? I didn't.
Yeah, you have a bit. No, not that. Sorry. Only I was going to say, whilst the department's complaints may have dropped, the complaints coming to members in the West of Swansea obviously has risen, and I invariably get the question, why can't we take wood to the Clyne? There's plenty of room in the Clyne site for a couple more skips. And yes, hazardous wood. For information, what is hazardous wood that can be passed, that I can pass on to people who complain to me?
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, Matthew, if I get it wrong, you could say, yeah, in simple terms, it's painted or treated wood. You know, it's stuff that's tannalized, pressure treated wood. All of that is hazardous material. So, Matthew, there may be more examples that he can give you, but it's that type of thing. It is.
Yeah, I was about to give you. So what I have been able to do in the last week is update our website and recycling centres to sort of give the public some information about what wood is. And as Mark said, it's painted or treated wood. So it's anything that's been treated with creosote or other sort of older form of paint, which is potentially hazardous, that can't then be sort of turned back into panel boards. It is a sort of fairly small minority of waste, sort of about 1% of wood that comes in. But we've effectively got to try and intercept that wood and put that in, make sure that goes in a different skip, because it can't go into wood which gets reused and get turned back into a panel board. Without being able to multitask, apologies. You either have to sort of wait for me for a couple of minutes while I run round the website, or sort of I can put it in the chat later on, a link to the recycling centre webpage, which gives you an actual definition of what hazardous wood is in as much detail as we've been provided by NRW. It is still vague. I don't, it is not much more than Mark has already said. It's painted, or certain types of painted or treated wood are considered hazardous.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that, Matthew. What I would like, if possible, after this meeting, not now, obviously, is some sort of information for members about this wood, because biggest problem, the complaints that members have is, if you look at fly tipping, is normally bits of wood with paint on it, or it's something that's come out of a house and has been thrown as fly tipped. So it's hazardous in that respect. It could be hazardous in that respect, but that's the big issue for members and the fly tipping. So I think after this, if you could send around to members what is acceptable and what isn't going to be acceptable, and as you said, it's a changing world all the time anyway. Are there any other questions? No. Or the other thing I want to ask you about the reunion shop in Llansamlet. Are there any plans to move it from there to somewhere which is a bit more, has a better footfall?
Short answer is not immediately. Just with, we've got sort of several projects ongoing, and it's just sort of a capacity to sort of to fit in and coordinate certain bits and pieces. We have previously run trials in sort of the market and not operated the market pre-COVID. I think part of our issue is getting the stock there, getting all staff there. My sort of instinct off the top of my head would be it would be quite a big operation to sort of pick it up and move it. There's an awful lot of behind the scenes storage of items, and we've got the space to do that up in Llansamlet. Not to say we couldn't do it somewhere else, but it would need to be thought through properly and sort of and make sure it's got enough, much like any of the sort of charity shops in town or elsewhere really. They've got a sort of quite a large shop front. They've they've got sort of probably quite a large storage area behind the scenes where they have to prepare items for reuse. In terms of just operationally, we presumably would have to pay rates somewhere. We would have to employ additional staff, so we'd have to get a certain throughput through it. Not to say we couldn't investigate it, but it would probably need to be thought about as a proper running business, and how we could do it.
Well, I was thinking more about the use of using the reunion shop in conjunction with some of these charities. That might be useful, because many of the charities have got plenty of stock, but they're not, not selling it at the moment, and it's becoming a bit of a, with some of the charities I know, it's become a bit of a nightmare because stuff are left outside their shops, and that is an issue then, isn't it? And I know that some of those charities are coming up to Llan's Hamlet to dispose of clothes, especially, and in some cases other items. So it's just a wonder if we could get some sort of link in with the charities to see whether or not we can, if you like, have a better understanding of what they need and what they wish to dispose of as well.
What I'd suggest is if any of them do contact you, just sort of give them my details. There's a probably point in this next year's report. I
shall make a note of that now, Matthew.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, from our point of view, we are sort of tying in with charities a bit more. So actually, some of our bulky collections, we speaking of British Heart Foundation to possibly intercept some of our bulky things, which we perhaps don't sell. We don't get that type of customer who walks up to tip treasures. So British Heart Foundation might be the better people to take and reuse those items. So we are starting to speak to people about linking in, and I think that you're right. So, certain people might walk into one shop, they don't walk into another shop. So we should almost target the materials going in there. Obvious thing to do is time and sort of somebody to coordinate it all, really.
We've also, Chair, just to give you an addition, yeah, we've made those contacts with British Heart, as Matthew said, so that when we take away three-piece suites under bulky collection that people are disposing of, some of them, as you can imagine, in pretty good condition, and there will be a natural outlet to them. They're better equipped to sell sofas, pieces, and things like that than we are. But also, we work with men's sheds today. So we mentioned wood earlier on. We have an arrangement with men's sheds where they can come up and collect wood for the men's sheds, obviously, and their projects. And we do work with, I don't know the charity, but we certainly work with paint disposal. So, we get half tins of paints and things like that. So we do encourage that rather than go, be treated as a waste product. We try to forge links, and I've got some links about being able to, dispose of half or part tins of paint sort of thing as well. So we're looking everywhere because that reuse is far better, is even better than recycling. So,
Correct. Right, if there's no other questions, Matthew, I have made a note, and I will contact the people who tell me about this charity stuff. I'll get them to contact you.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Right. Okay, if that's all, thank you both very much.
Yeah,
I know, Mark, you'll be staying on to give us a verbal update on the pothole stuff. But Matthew, thank you very much. Very, very comprehensive, and thank you very much for your input. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Bye all.
Right, the next item is just a verbal update from Councillor Mark Thomas on the pothole carriageway progress. The reason for this is that I've seen them out, the people out repairing these potholes all over the place, and I thought it was only right and proper that we give an opportunity for Mark to come along and tell the Scrutiny Board what's actually happening. I know there's just been a press release out there, I've seen it somewhere, but Mark, I think it's right and proper that you tell members what's happening.
Yeah, it's quite timely, actually. I mean, the press release was planned about, well, before it was actually, it is pure coincidence. I think it's gone out, whether the timing is good or bad, I don't know, Chair, but I think it went out this morning. But that was not by design to the Scrutiny. That was planned to go out as well, because as you said, it is an opportunity. Look, I wanted to start this, I know this is only a verbal report, so, there's not tons of detail here, but it is, again, I do try to start any, reports that I give with, my, I can't help be still full of praise for our workforce. And look, as a cabinet member, I have the opportunity here to talk about the services that report into me, but this obviously goes right across all services within Swansea, and we all recognise that, and it's constantly and rightly being recognised at every council meeting we have about the work of our staff and frontline staff. And here again, despite the COVID pandemic, last year and this year, we are still out there continuing with and completing our resurfacing programme. I mean, you paid, in particular point there about the potholes repair. This year to date, we have filled in 3,500 potholes right across the length and breadth of Swansea. That's a huge number, and more will come, obviously. Now, what particularly satisfies me when I talk about that is we've got a 48-hour pledge. And I think, look, I've experienced it in my own community, but I've said to people who come on to me about potholes, and I said, well, get on the website and report it. It'd be quicker than waiting for me to come out and you bump into me. By the time you meet me, you'd have already, it's 48 hours, and people have sort of made some disparaging remarks. But the fact is, 99% of our potholes are filled and repaired within that 48-hour pledge time, and that's a fact. So that's an astounding record, and that's through the pandemic as well, you know. So we have continued with that, and that's a fantastic effort. And the reason I stress it so much, yes, you can, you know, I'm stressing it so that we get the credit for it and all that, but no, it's to demonstrate to the public that it is worthwhile getting online and reporting it. It's the quickest, easiest, most effective way. You can wait and report it to your ward council if you want to, and then they have to get in line or report it, or whatever. The most efficient way of getting that nuisance pothole outside your house or on your journey to work fixed by far is reporting it online through our online mechanism, reporting mechanism, because it will be done 99% of the time within 48 hours. And that's a remarkable achievement. And that I'm trying to sell it as well as giving credit to the process, but to sell it to the public as to encourage them to use that process, because it's definitely the best way. But going on to the other, you know, our highways maintenance budget this year for repair and resurfacing was 5.3 million. That included some Welsh Government grant funding as well. And we are, you know, cracking on with that. And the programme is going according to plan. Part of that programme is patch. So as we all know, the patch programme, it's different this year. It's the first year where we put extra investment into it. So normally the patch programme runs from about March, April, right through till about November. This year it's been extended. It's running for the full 12 months, okay? And I have reported previously at council, but just as a reminder, what you will see now is that single member wards, as always, all wards used to get 5 days attendance from the patch team in their wards. And then when we looked at it, we thought, well, if you look at that geographically and any other means, it's a little bit unfair. So what we've done now with a bit of extra investment is we've expanded that scheme. So single member wards like myself, it's still the 5 days. You don't lose anything at all. But where there's 2 members in a ward, that's extended by 2 days to a 7-day. For a 3-member ward, it's 9 days, etc. So you are, because it tends to be, obviously the ward by definition, the more councillors are, the bigger the ward is geographically. So they are getting a fairer crack at the whip effectively. So, but in order to achieve that, obviously there was a time pressure because it added more time to our patchwork. So we've extended the programme right through, you know, the financial year. So that, unlike previous years, we are still carrying on with the patch programme. It has meant a bit of a delay, you know, because normally people would, you know, wards would be done within that 8-month window, but now it's extended over 12 months. But you get better bang for your buck effectively. So it's, you know, the other thing I would always encourage as well is you get invitations, ward councillors get notified when patches, you know, come into their ward. I always encourage councillors to get involved with that. You know, officers go out and inspect. And I know from my own ward, they will pick up most of the defects in my ward, but there hasn't been a year since I've been a councillor where I haven't asked for particularly the back streets and the lanes and the places where there's not a high volume of traffic. So, you know, get engaged in that process as well and feed in where the areas of footway or road surface that you want repaired or replaced. So I'd encourage that. As far as resurfacing is concerned, this year to date, we have resurfaced 200,000 square metres of highway. That's been in the north of the city, 50,000 square metres. In the central and east of the city, another 50,000 square metres. And for the west of the city, and it's because of the geographical size of it, particularly Gower, it's been 100,000. So that's the 3-way split, really, because we tend to divide the city into 3 areas when we're looking at highways work anyway. So, but those are the numbers there. We've also, in the last month, I think it is just over a month, we've also put in 30,000 square metres of the anti-skid road surface in as well. So everything's on target. The investment is being, is being spent. The extra work is being done, but there's always a proviso with it. Obviously, it's a never-ending journey, a never-ending story. The total, although we're putting in 5.3, which is extra money than our core budget allocation that we normally put in, there is always a need to spend more than we can spend because the condition of the roads generally. And that's why, because people say, well, if you're spending extra money, why can't all these roads be done? Well, the total bill for all the roads in Swansea is certainly in excess of £50 million. So although we're putting in extra spending and extra investment, we still have to prioritise where we do roads. And that priority status is done through, highway office inspectors. They follow a certain defined industry criteria for measuring the condition of a road, and that is how you prioritise on scheduled roads to be done, as well as on our 5-year rolling programme that we publish anyway. So, but I'm very pleased with the progress we are making on that, and I'm happy to report that, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. This is for information, but if any members have got any particular questions, generally for around Swansea, not for the individual wards, then I'm sure Councillor Mark Thomas would answer them. But I thought it was important that you came and give us a verbal update on what's happening. Are there any questions generally? No, the one thing I would like to ask, Mark, and one of the reasons that, we put extra money in, but people say, oh, we're not getting, or we don't see anything. But I understand the cost of the raw material has more than doubled. And part of the problem is we may be putting more investment in, but the cost of the material is now going up exponentially, or that's what I was told. So can you answer that?
I think there have been two issues. The bigger issue, actually, rather than cost in this year, has been supply. There's times when we've struggled to get the raw materials to be able to do it. There has been an increase. I wouldn't like to speculate about the level of increase, Jay. I can get you that detail. I don't think it's as much as double. There would have been an increase because, any building materials, any wood or materials, anything associated with the building trade has gone up. So by definition, I would have expected that there would have been an increase, but I'm not aware. I call from somebody else. We should have. I'm not aware of that level of increase. As I said, I don't want to guess at it, because I could be inaccurate in that statement, but I can get you that information. But
okay.
No, I'm not. I don't believe that it's at that level of a doubling, but it will have gone up in line with everything else that's gone up.
I think what I was told is in line with the fact that the stuff we use is linked to the petroleum industry. Yeah. And in many cases that's gone up, so it may not be double, but it's gone up substantially. But Mark, unless there's any further questions, and I don't see anybody putting their hand up, can I thank you, Mark, for spending your time to give us this verbal update, because it is very, very important, and especially this time of the year when it's grey and miserable out there, as my Councillor Des Thomas has been commenting on. Many people don't believe that, but it is not a very nice time. And can you pass on our thanks to the staff that are actually out there working, doing this work? Thank you very much.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, Mark.
Right. The next item on the agenda is revenue and capital budget monitoring second quarter. Ben, are you around here somewhere? There he is.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here. Yes, very briefly in terms of update, because this is going to Cabinet tomorrow, so you've got advanced sight of it. Normal format, pretty much so, in terms of the recommendations to Cabinet tomorrow. The usual 3, which you the same as the first quarter. So the third one is a little bit sniffy from me, reminding directors not to overspend, but recognising that they're only overspending as a result of COVID. So I've got to give them the benefit of the doubt. And then the number 4 recommendation is a sort of halfway house one, recognising the announcements the leaders made at council and I've endorsed, which is our intention to have potentially money to add to the economic recovery funds. But given the grave uncertainties we all face, that's going to be a matter for firming up in the third quarter report to Cabinet. Section 2.3 summarises the overall position and emphasises very much that whilst there is an overspend on services, there's an even bigger overspend due to COVID alone. So it doesn't take a genius to deduce that if it weren't for COVID, services would be underspending, which is no mean feat. Section 2.7 sets out in normal fashion, I say normal fashion, it's the second year of doing this, where we're claiming in arrears by a couple of months to Welsh Government for hardship support. It's a well-trodden path, but it does mean it takes quite a while for it to grind through the system. But I'm always grateful to receive the millions of pounds that do flow in due course. But it does make my forecasting much harder than normal straightforward grant offers. Section 2.9 reminds I've got some central pots that are still available to ameliorate some of the pressures. You've just touched upon inflation and other matters, which very much are a worry in the current year and probably even more of a worry going forward. Section 3 sets out the overall contingency fund, both the in-year contingency and the amount carried forward at the end of last year in recognition of the very substantial underspends we achieved, and summarises the relatively small allocations made to date, and also potentially applies the rest to draw that down to zero to enable there to be that amount set aside potentially for the Economic Recovery Fund. Section 3.4 sets out the actions being taken by directors. The overall position is drawn together in section 4, and the table which confirms my advice that at the moment there is an underspend forecast on services of £4.7 million, and in due course there will be the usual matters in terms of underspending on capital financing. The capital budget is set out in section 5. The housing revenue account in section 6 in normal fashion with concerns, and then appendix A summarises the overall position in terms of spending and other obligations. I remain concerned about the level of council tax not being collected, and that's been reflected in my advice to council already for setting the tax base, but you have the overall summary there and the director's comments thereafter. So it's normal fashion, early doors, second quarter, but I'd rather be in this position and have an underspend than not have an underspend, given some of the comments that are being made nationally elsewhere, particularly across the border in England. At that point, I'll hand over to the leader and then come back in a couple of moments. Thank you, Chair.
Leader?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very, very briefly, I think, look, very positive position to be in, especially at quarter 2. Members will know usually in quarter 2 we are in a deficit position, and we usually hope that the position continues to improve from there. You know, the trajectory is still a positive one, and I would hope that despite the risks that we have, and there are some significant ones there, including inflation and obviously the impacts that Omicron may bring in terms of impacts given potential restrictions that may have to come in the coming weeks, that we will still be in a positive position come outturn. So very, very positive position. I think the other thing to just note again, linked to inflation, but it's something obviously that will have a major impact on us, is the outturn in terms of pay awards and staff pressures of pay. And obviously the extra measures that we're taking on things like recruitment and retention for services like social services. So there are again some risks that we are carrying at the present time, as all authorities are doing. But as Mr. Smith said, a positive position.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Members, comments, Councillor Peter Black.
Yeah, thank you. Apologies for zooming in on relatively small amounts of expenditure, but every time I look through this report, it just shoots out at me. On the contingency fund, we're spending £35,000 on Welsh translation costs for social media, which puzzles me because we've got our own translation unit. So I don't understand why we're doing that, especially as social media are going to be fairly short translations. Maybe Ben could find out and come back to me on that.
It's an indicative allocation for an additional member of staff to assist with Welsh translation in social media. I don't believe that the head of comms has been able to fill that post in terms of capacity, so it may not actually be fully drawn down, but on the basis I reported it in first quarter and made it available to the relevant head of service, it doesn't get returned to contingency unless it's not spent at year end. So I take your point, Councillor Black, but I think it was just capacity issues within Welsh translation.
So we're just taking an extra member of staff, right?
In principle, but I think they've struggled to actually fill the post anyway. You're aware that recruitment is very difficult in a number of areas anyway. So I suspect the whole amount will not actually be drawn at the end of the year, and therefore there will be more on contingency. It's an indicative allocation to date.
Unless they're using external translators to try to reduce the backlog, of course.
But as your point quite rightly says, it tends to be relatively short stuff, so I don't believe they are using it. I mean, the Welsh translation, it does go out to external translation when they have to for some of the capacity issues, and I know you've raised other matters in terms of other options that are available for Welsh translation.
Which have been adopted, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely, thank you for that. Yeah, cheers.
Anyone else? No? I wonder if I could ask a relatively simple question, Ben. Page 16. Revenue budget summary. Right, service forecast overspend of 15.9 million, council tax shortfall of 2 million, the mitigating circumstances, the cost recovery of 7.1, apprenticeship levy, inflation, contingency fund not utilised, leaving us with an underspend of 4.7 million. Am I right?
Mute to get myself off mute. £4.7 million on services and a further capital financing underspend of £5 million in addition to that, Chair.
Yeah.
So overall, the summary shows about 12 million, 2 million council tax because it has to be shown that way, leaving approximately 10, which is 5 capital financing and just under 5 on services.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. That the service deficit is 4. The services underspend in that summary is 4.7 million, but made up of the contingency fund and the service forecast overspend being deducted.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So effectively at the moment, as the leader just said, we are in credit to about 4 million, 4.7 million.
On services and the central
services, yeah.
An additional 5 million on capital financing, which you probably well anticipate what I'm going to say, which in line with council policy and the advice given flows into the capital equalisation reserve in the first instance, because we've effectively ring-fenced those bits. I should also add, you've had advice to council where I've externalised all of the borrowing, so this is the last year that you should reasonably expect there to be a very substantial underspend on capital financing, because I've borrowed all the money that I set out to borrow on behalf of the general fund. There will still be potential underspends because, of course, if there's slippage on the capital programme, or if we're successful in getting more additional grants towards the end of the year, I might be able to substitute some of the items. It's a long-standing tradition where if additional capital money comes in relatively late in the year, we can flip it into the new year with Welsh Government permission and subject to the auditor's satisfaction. And so there is still likely to be some underspending on capital financing, but not the order of magnitude that you've got used to over recent years when I've come in front of this panel, where I've not borrowed all the money. It's just a factor of the amount that's been borrowed in year, and we don't pay full MRP until the year following the year in which the money is drawn from the Public Works Loans Board.
Because normally our capital spend was in the region, if I remember rightly, 2016, 2014, 2015 was around about £200,000-300,000, and it's only since you started borrowing the larger amounts that figure has gone up and put into the capitalised equalisation fund. So that being the case, has anybody got any other questions on this? No? Well, can I thank you, Leader, and you, Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Chair.
Very formal, eh? Thank you, Ben. Hope you have a good Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you.
And the same to you.
Yeah. Well done.
Okay, right. If we now go on to the next item on the agenda, thank you all.
Thank you.
Pardon? Oh, sorry, Rob. The next item is the work programme and then the letters. We'll go through the work programme first. Okay, where are we now? Where's the work programme? Right, the work programme. We have done the next item. The next meeting is Tuesday, the 18th of January, where we performance monitoring report, pre-decision, scrutiny and the first draft budget. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then obviously there will be a further meeting, 9, which will be the budget scrutiny meeting, which obviously we will set up when we know what the times are. Okay, and then
That's quite early for the draft budget, isn't it?
What now?
18th of January is a bit early for the budget, or is that just it's not the final budget?
That's the final draft. That's not the budget itself. That's the draft.
Okay.
What from what I can gather, having spoken to Ben, is that we will have, by the 21st of December, we will have an idea of what Welsh Government are passing on as an uplift or a possible uplift to local authorities. Then by then they will have a, if you like, an outline of what the budget will look like, which will then come to us on the 18th. And then there'll be a further meeting later on then when the final budget prior to going to the special council.
So it's a draft, a penultimate draft, a penultimate draft, final draft, and a final draft followed by the final budget. Yeah.
And the draft.
And a draft of the draft budget. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Peter. Could you please explain that again? I didn't quite follow it.
Didn't you get the drift of the draft?
Yeah.
Oh. We're going from bad to worse here at the moment. Emily won't know what to write in a minute.
But basically, we got
I got it. Yeah.
Scrutiny meeting, and then we have a scrutiny meeting on what the council budget will likely to be.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then fit for the future closure report. That actually could be a bit later than the 15th, I think. But anyway, we'll see what happens. And then we have the letters on item 10. So have I got lost there?
Just the one letter.
Yeah. And I think that's it, Emily. Can I thank you all very much for attending and wish you all the best for Christmas and New Year. And Emily, thank you for being an excellent scrutiny officer. I know that we all appreciate the work you've done. Thank you all very much.
Well done. Yeah.
Can I just apologise for being so late, Chairman, please?
That's okay, Paxton. Linda James has had huge problems with connections. I think it must be west of Des Thomas is not working. It must be the weather down there. So I think
Must be
I was in the governor's meeting earlier, is what it amounts to. So I was working.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have a good time, everyone. Merry
Take
Christmas.
care.
Cheers.
That's reciprocated to everybody, of course.